Too late? Ah, it
Yeah.
is too late. We're live. All right, fuck it. I'm good.
Just do the intro now, Zane. Jeez. No, that's a lot
Ah,
of pressure. All right. So, anyways, hi.
Hey.
Yeah. I was talking to the fans, actually. It's Dallas
Oh,
Winston, Zane Simon, the utmost professionals of the MMA media. We're with
yep.
BloodyElbow.com. We're going to try to fly through this double-decker of a UFC Saturday with the Fight Night 41 card and also the TUF Brazil 3 finale. I have with me Zane Simon today. Zane, hi.
Yo.
Yo. Went all Barry
Yeah.
White for that one. All right,
All
so
right. Yeah.
what we're going to do here is Zane knows his shit lately since I'm doing other things I don't. So I'm going to, I mean, there's no way we could go through every single fight in detail. I mean, shit, when we do that for one card, sometimes it stretches into an hour and 20, an hour and 30. So we're not going to do that today for both our convenience and yours, the viewer. So I'm going
That's
to
right.
throw.
Because clearly, if you're sitting down, just watch this all day, you have better things to do.
Yeah, that's well, we won't comment on that. So we're going to start with Munoz versus Mousasi. This starts at well, let's see, the first Fight Pass preliminary card starts at noon Eastern time, and then the 1, 2, 3, 4 fight main card starts at 3 p.m. also on UFC Fight Pass. This card is taking place from Berlin, Germany. So for each of these cards, I'm going to throw the preliminary card lineup at Zane and have him talk about any particular highlighted areas or fights we should be interested in. That being said, Zane, work your magic on this undercard. What stands out to you?
All right. Well, a couple things. First of all, it's really nice to see some new heavyweights. I'm always a fan. I mean, I know a lot of people. We all, shit on the heavyweight division because it's sloppy and weird, and you never know what you're going to get out of it. But Pesta and Magomedov are both pretty solid. Pesta is I believe, Czech signing, if I am not mistaken. Yep. And he was most notable for having putting out a pretty fun video and having a really well designed website of like, do you want to train with me? I'm looking to train with any big campaign, like video campaign that he did. And Magomedov, he's kind of notable for beating up Tim Sylvia recently, and he. This is very much like Pesta's a big kind of hulking, not really so much a grappler as much as he is a ground and pound fighter. Like he has to get in close, get his arms around somebody, and then he's a pretty good dirty boxer. He's really strong, really compact. And Magomedov's a big, rangy, lanky kickboxer who doesn't have a lot of power, but is very technical and very proficient. And this will really just be about whether or not Magomedov has enough footwork and technique to keep Pesta off him. Because if Pesta can just hulk him to the ground, then it's gonna be an ugly fight.
So Pesta
And
being the phone booth guy, how's his entries, his agility, that kind of thing?
on the well, he's obviously, I'd say he's a really raw athletic talent. Like he's got some good athleticism, but on the outside he's trash. Like his entries, he's just I will throw a massive clubbing hook at you, and hopefully that'll get you off balance enough that you won't be able to catch me as I just rush in head first on you. And
So
he's not like
primitive,
a
but not
technical.
entirely ineffective. I mean, the Team Quest guys were a little more graceful about it, but all those guys sailed out a big haymaker and followed in behind it to clinch up.
Yeah,
Similar?
yeah, pretty much. He just doesn't have a real technical shot or anything like that. He's got a lot of raw athleticism that he's depending on to make that work. But when he gets into the clinch, when he gets a hand on you, he becomes a lot more comfortable. He feels a lot more natural. It's obviously something he's worked on a lot more, and he's a lot better at throwing punches inside and knees inside and controlling that range of the fight. So, I mean, that's why I say it's really going to be for Magomedov about how well he can stay to the outside and use his longer punches and better technique.
And who you leaning towards in this one?
I gotta lean towards Magomedov just because he is more technical. He's large enough at 6'5", and big enough that I think I think Pesta will have a lot of trouble hulking him around. If if he was a small heavyweight, then I would be more concerned about Pesta's ability to implement his game. But usually, if it's somebody who's big and reasonably technical, like Magomedov is, just going in and trying to strength throw somebody to the ground isn't going to work.
All right, and so the next one you weren't overly keen on, and I'm actually pretty interested in this one. Maxi Blanco versus Andy Ogle. What are your thoughts on this one?
This is tough for me just because it's a trust fight on Maximo Blanco. Like it's
As
does
they all
he
are.
Yeah, they all are. And it's just like, does he get a win that he should be fully capable of getting without just completely throwing it all away off stupid game planning, bad cardio, bad, some
Rule
indefensible
conduct.
mistake? And Ogle will be there and will test him for as long as Blanco gives him options. I mean, that's the thing, is that Blanco gives Ogle an opening, Ogle will take advantage of it.
That's why it's kind of interesting to me because you could look at either as a great or an unfavorable opponent for one another. Because a prime Maxi, he's got excellent wrestling, explosive striking, and he's super agile and athletic.
Yeah.
And Ogle's just like a bulwark. I mean, he's just a really strong, tough dude. He's not going to pull out a whole lot of like highlight reel moments, but just tough as nails, and he'll always be, clawing and scratching. He'll never go away unless you.
Yeah, and he's a much, much more technical grappler than people give him credit for. I mean, he, I would say, I would argue that until he got finished, by that triangle choke, he may have been on his way to beating Charles Oliveira.
I don't remember that fight clearly, but I do remember when he fought Akira Kurosani in the third round. I might have scored that a 10-8 because he kind of gift wrapped one of his arms, and it wasn't a super dominant position, but Kurosani just had to sit there and take a spoonful after spoonful of right hand, and I remember thinking that was kind of deceivingly clever by Ogle. So, and I wouldn't have guessed that he has a super technical ground game either. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go with Maxi here. Are you gonna offer up a pick?
You know what? I'm done trusting Blanco. I really am. I got to go with Ogle. I mean, I think that Blanco has every possibility of winning this fight without trouble, but I don't trust him to do it. I just don't trust him to win a fight he's supposed to win.
I got you. That's fair enough. I mean, it's hard to, you got to respect that judgment after the history that he's shown.
Yeah.
So, how about the next one, Pollock versus Sobota? Any thoughts on that?
Nah, not really. I mean, it's good to see Sobota back. He showed that like he got into the UFC too early, and then he spent some more time on the regional circuit, solidified his game a little, which is kicking from the outside and then clinch grappling, and then like jiu-jitsu grappling, which he's not bad at, but I'm not really otherwise. And Pollack's like he's young, he's a good prospect, but he's pretty raw. None of his game really is connected. He kickboxes okay, he wrestles okay, he grapples okay, but none of it really feels like it flows into it anything. Like he doesn't chain any of it well. So I mean, it'll just be an interesting to see if Pollock is advanced enough to the point that he can get by a pretty decent vet like Sobota.
And it's been a long ass time for Sobota, right? When's the last time he was in the UFC? I wanna
It
say like
has
4 years ago.
been since 2010, so it has been 4 years.
On the money on that guess. This next one, I think we're both at least want to comment on. This should be actually a really good scrap.
This should be an incredible fight.
Yuri Alcantara versus Vonlee. Vonlee was the guy. I don't even remember what Ultimate Fighter it was. He didn't even make the cut, but he was the guy that they had a video of it where Dana White was lauding his grappling skills because I believe he submitted more people in the tough tryouts than anyone ever has.
Yeah.
And then but that wasn't good enough to make the reality show for.
Nope.
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
Follow that. And it was weird because then usually when they don't take a guy in the show, like I actually believe Eddie Alvarez tried out for the Ultimate Fighter.
Well, yeah. So did Frankie Edgar and Ben Henderson. So.
I did not know that. No shit. Both of those guys.
Both of them.
So, eventual champions, but not good enough to make the reality show.
Yeah, whenever I talk to fighters, especially because I tend to talk to them like right as they're coming to the UFC or when they're like big prospects on the regional circuit, I talk to them about getting in the Ultimate Fighter. I like a lot of them have said like, "Oh, I tried out and I didn't make it." And it's like, dude, trust me, that means nothing. Like, no part of not making the Ultimate Fighter is reflective of your skill as a fighter. Like,
Which,
that is
yeah, okay.
categorically not what they're looking for.
Hmm. Well, beyond that reasoning, this is going to be a hell of a fight. I mean, I guess I'm curious on your thoughts on Vonlee's stand-up because his wrestling and his scrambling and his transitions and his submission skill is, I mean, really good. I'd put wrestling as the lowest priority on there, but his grappling, especially his transition and scrambles, are kind of off the hook. And I was actually really impressed with Alcantara's scrambling. And I want to say when he fought Faber, he hit that hip throw, and it wasn't like, wow, he took Uriah down. I mean, he heaved him
Yeah.
overhead. And he's got real good Muay Thai, and I remember being kind of surprised at some of his grappling savvy too. So I'm kind of leaning Alcantara, but break this shit down. What are you thinking?
So, well, I mean, the big thing for me with Vonlee was his last fight against Nam Fan. And Vonlee looked amazing. He beat the tar out of Fan for 3 rounds without breaking a sweat. Just 100% stand up all the way and just cutting angles, finding, every kick, every punch, anything he wanted was there. And it was slaughter. I mean, if you think of like what Takeo Mizugaki Nam Fan, that fight, I mean, he beat Fan way more definitively than Takeo Mizugaki ever did.
Was most of that fight on the feet?
Almost all of it.
Hmm.
In
That
fact, I don't think there was maybe more than a minute that it spent on the ground.
and that is impressive because Namfan is a gamer on the feet.
It,
Really
yeah,
interesting blend of like traditional boxing and then a lot of, let's just say, non-traditional. I think he
yeah,
specializes in a couple Vietnamese martial arts,
yeah.
but
He has a
phenomenal
couple of,
kickboxer.
yeah, and I mean Lee just made him look like trash. It was as ugly. I mean, it was got to be up there for the worst performance of Nam Fan's career, and absolutely as good as you could ever imagine Vonlee being. And the big thing for both of them is that and Vonlee more so, and this is I think where it gets dangerous, is that Vonlee his grappling is really good and exciting, but he tends to be chancy. He tends to take opportunities that can put him in a lot of trouble and get him subbed. I
Great
mean,
for
you
the
look at
fans, not great for always the win-loss ratio, right?
exactly like you look at a lot of his losses: T.J. Dillashaw submission, Rafael Asunciao submission, Ashley Grimshaw submission, David Lee submission, Brett, and like he's lost a bunch by submission.
As an aside, on every show that I do, I'm going to insist that TJ Dillashaw is referred to as TJ Dolomite.
Dolomite, all right,
I mean,
I
he's
can
earned
do
that.
that. Not Dilly Bar like Burke does.
No, that's not. I used to eat dilly bars. Isn't that a thing? I thought only
Yes,
my. All right, I
yes,
thought only my neighbor had the magic recipe when I was a little kid. But after his last performance, Dolomite, I think, is.
Dolomite. All right.
So I was kind of leaning Alcantara here.
I'm gonna lean Lee, and this is not because, and I think Alcantara is probably gonna win this because Alcantara's shown he is faster and more aggressive
I was going to
in
say
his
more
stand up. Like,
powerful. Sorry to interrupt you, but along what you just said, he seems like a powerful cat, both in the
yeah,
clinch physically and striking wise.
yeah, he has a lot of power and a lot of speed, and he uses those together really well. He's really aggressive, and so I think that blend probably does bad things to Lee. Quite honestly, I think that he can probably overwhelm Lee. And so honestly, I should be picking against Lee, but I've been so impressed by Lee, and I kind of have a soft spot for him and his fighting style that I'm gonna go with Lee here.
All right, so Magnus Sedenblad is coming back. Tall. I don't remember what his height is, but this is one of the tallest, lankiest cats. He had a
Yep.
great rep coming in. I'm going off my memory here, but he lost his first fight. People were kind of down on him, but he's been looking really, really tight since then. I don't know a lot about Krzysztof Jotko. Do you?
He's already fought in the UFC once, and He's all right. He's nothing exciting. I mean, honestly, I'm trying to remember. I think it was Bruno Santos that he fought, and I honestly thought that Santos won that fight. Yeah, he fought Bruno Santos, beat him by decision, and I was pretty unimpressed.
Is this Carioca Santos Bruno that was undefeated
Yep,
forever? Brick
yep,
shithouse of a big
yep,
ass splendor. Was
yep.
that his first loss ever?
I don't think so, but I now just have to find it again.
I like to catch up on what's happening and has been happening in the UFC in these candid discussions. So I don't remember that fight whatsoever. My days of
uh,
knowing anything
that was
long
I don't.
gone.
Yeah, that was Bruno Santos's first professional loss.
So what is that? 14 year? Because I remember he was 13 and
He's
0
13
back
to
in the
1
day.
now.
All right. Wow. I don't.
And
Man, I wish I could remember that fight. But Bruno is like a pure control guy, not a lot of offensive potency. Do you remember
yep,
how that fight went down? Tell us about it.
that was the control versus control. And quite frankly, I thought that Santos did more with his grappling time. He landed more strikes. He went for more submissions than Jotko did, who really just kind of held him down and smothered him.
Hmm. So that am I correct here that Jotko is going to be looking to get inside on Sedenblad, and he'll be faced with long, not necessarily super powerful, but some long ass lanky strikes, and then Sedenblad's length and height all transmits into serious leverage whenever he's in
I,
contact
I,
range.
I would say, from what I've seen of Sedenblad, that he's a more dangerous grappler. And
Yeah,
this,
offensively
yeah,
potent.
and since he's large, I don't think Jotko's going to be able to sort of drag him down. And grind him out. So, I mean, yeah, if I had to make a quick pick on this, I'd say Sedenblad probably is the more polished fighter with more ways to win, and Jotko's going to give him all 3 rounds to work with.
And if Jotko's going to win, it sounds like it's going to be watching the paint dry, kind of
Yeah,
not overly exhilarating. All right.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm going to go
very.
Sedenblad too. Lay it on us for this next one. I know you wanted to talk about it. Drew Dober versus Nick Hein.
Yeah, I'm high on Nick Hein, and I like him a lot, and partially that's just because I got the chance to interview him and talk with him. But he was a German national team judoka for quite a long time.
Young
And
dude. Young dude.
he was an Olympic hopeful. He didn't end up making it because he was in the same bracket as like one of Germany's greatest ever judoka. Um, and so he's got a real solid judo base, and he's built like kind of with the Sean Shirk build, like a little fire plug at lightweight, and used to fight at welterweight, so not even like a small lightweight, but just like a little ball of muscle.
Young dude. What's is it like?
Uh, about I think he may just be hitting 30, but he's pretty young in his MMA career.
Gotcha. All right.
And he's the kind of guy who has obviously got a ton of time and high level technique in a martial art, and has a lot of natural athletic ability, and is coming to MMA late and picking up striking and all that. I mean, the big thing is he needs to be a more active striker, but he's got a bit of power. He's, looks like he's working on base technique of just like base kickboxing technique and being solid offensively and defensively and not just a wild brawler. And the big thing is that his judo, he's really brought his judo with him into MMA. So like you will see him go in there and get the body lock and hit sweeps and throws and trips and all sorts of judo, traditional judo stuff that he can pull off because he's got so much experience.
So anything on Dober before we move to the
He's a
main card?
low-powered kickboxer.
Yeah.
He was a former tough guy, tough scrub, low-powered kickboxer. One of the guys that like got into the opening round, I believe, and then lost.
So I
I
take it
think.
you're leaning Hein for this one. You're
Oh
high on
yeah,
Hein.
I would fine. I think Dober's just. I don't know. He's the kind of fighter that. I mean, he's from. I think he's from Nebraska, and he doesn't wrestle.
That seems all wrong, doesn't it?
It does,
Sorry,
doesn't it?
Nebraska. It's like being from Idaho and hating potatoes.
Yeah, and so it just he's got a decent high output, or he's got a decent like kickboxing style with a decent high output. Like he'll go out there and he'll throw strikes and he'll stay consistent, but he doesn't do a lot of damage and his kickboxing's not that great, and I'm just not all that high on him.
All right, we'll truck on to the main card. It starts at 3 Eastern on UFC Fight Pass. Tom Ninimaki versus Niklas Backstrom. Is this Backstrom's debut?
Yes, this is Backstrom's debut, and it is a shitty debut to get.
Well, yeah, because Ninimaki debuted against, Hani Yaya, one of the most
Yep.
technical, fierce grapplers, and beat him soundly. So
Yeah.
this is one of many head-scratching matchups to me on the card.
Well, Backstrom was a late replacement for Thiago Tavares.
Oh, well, there you go. That makes a lot of sense because that would have been
Yeah,
that would have been
that
a
would have
nice
been an
matchup.
awesome fight. And Backstrom's one of the top prospects in the entire sport, quite honestly.
No shit.
Yeah, he's a national grappling champion out of Sweden, and done a lot of like gi and no gi, and he's only 24, and his striking is a work in progress. He's a great clinch fighter with knees, especially. Like he's really long and tall and rangy for featherweight, and he's got a really good kicking game from the outside. And then when he gets inside, he just cinches up a double collar tie and goes straight to clinch knees and goes hard on it. And then he's a great grappler, and he's really like a great, well-rounded package. But honestly, Ninimaki's every bit as good a grappler and a better stand-up fighter, and has worlds more experience.
All right, so and I was kind of leaning into Maki before that, but I mean that's fairly intriguing on Backstrom because I knew absolutely nothing about that background. These next three fights I am actually familiar with and looking forward to. Luke Barnett versus or Barnett, I suppose I should stress that, versus Sean Strickland. So I believe Strickland was the King of the Cage champ that came in undefeated and really impressed
Yep.
in his debut. And Luke Barnett is another guy. There's not a lot of guys nowadays that stand out on TUF, but for him being long and lanky and showing some of the striking and of course the ability to defend takedowns like he has, I mean I think that's real promising for a cat like him. Do you see? I mean, to me, Strickland had excellent grappling. I was really impressed by his transitions and his savvy on the ground.
Yeah.
Do you see this boiling down to kind of a striker versus grappler match, basically?
I would accept that Barnett's best talent really still lies in fighter and a clinch fighter. Like he is big and rangy, and he's all right from range. Like he's gotten good enough defensively to not just get like he's not Stefan Struve sort of waiting up there to get hit hard as Struve does in his losses. Um, he's gotten good enough defensively to not just get plugged by big overhand looping punches, but he really is at his best when he's clinching up with somebody and when he can get them up against the fence, or he's got a pretty good takedown game, he's got a pretty good top grappling game especially. And Strickland's big thing too is, I mean, he did great. He just blew Bubba McDaniel out of the water in that fight, but he's also very much a top control grappler. Like his big thing really, he doesn't have a lot of submission wins in his career because he tends to just get on top of people and pound them out. And so it's going to be, in that way, they're both big, they're both lanky, Strickland's probably a bit thicker, but they both like to get in tight and get in the clinch and work for a top takedown and top control. And Barnett's the better range striker at this point. That's really the big thing, is that Strickland still hasn't shown much of a game from the outside at all. So I think Barnett, I'd probably give him a slight advantage, but Strickland has, I mean, to me, he's the kind of fighter who it's hard to tell what his limit is because it's hard to tell just exactly how naturally athletic he is.
And he hasn't really been pushed, which is really a credit to him. I'm not saying that as a bad thing, but he hasn't been pushed. We haven't seen him fight through a lot of serious adversity. So I think there's still a little bit of a question mark here. I agree with what you said about Barnett, and to me that's better that he's more competent in the clinch, because even if you're a long, lanky guy and you can't strike from range, opponents are going to look to get in your face and have
Yeah.
their way with you. So I think that that's a really kind of, I don't know, an encouraging aspect of his game, that he has that range striking ability, but he's not only solid but almost even better in the clinch.
Oh yeah, he's much better. I mean, you look at all the knockouts he's gotten. It's usually when he can get a double collar tie, or when he can get somebody trapped right against the fence and just unload on them.
Which usually comes after defending a takedown. Am I wrong there?
Yeah, it can come after defending a takedown, or just when he gets, he, like I say, he's solid enough on the outside that he can kind of like catch somebody and hurt him maybe with a long jab or a long hook, and something like that, and then he'll rush in and he'll get the collar tie and he'll start working for like elbows and knees and inside uppercuts and hooks and things like that, and so he's been a surprisingly solid fighter because of that, and he's got a lot of knockout power to go with it.
So I'm going Barnett, E2.
I'd go Barnett, but like I say, I think it's just a question of how much natural talent does Strickland have? Because he's shown that he's got some good technique, especially in his top control grappling and ground and pound. But it could be that he just has this wellspring of natural athletic ability, this coordination and smoothness that other fighters just aren't going to be able, like Barnett, aren't going to be able to match, where he can get in and get a takedown and get mount and get side control and things like that and really wreck shop.
So the next fight in the card, two of the, I don't know how you want to word this, least popular, least loved. Francis Carmont versus CB Holloway. I actually have no problem with CB whatsoever. I actually kind of like the dude.
Oh yeah, he's never done anything other than look the way he does, to my knowledge, to
And
make
if
him.
that was the case, we would not all work for Kid Nate, I would have to say. So we can't hold ourselves to those guidelines. I've taken a shot at him when he's not here. That's dirty. Sorry, Nate. So I actually got really high on CB Holloway when he seemed to be pretty much like another one-dimensional wrestler from Arizona, but he came out with, what was that? I know it was a Peruvian necktie, and before that I want to say maybe it was just a guillotine, or it was almost like a Granby roll into a guillotine. I mean, he started showing some nice submission prowess, which is like one of my favorite things for a traditional wrestler to add to his arsenal.
Yeah.
And in Carmon, I will admit he's the first guy. There was one, I don't even remember who it was. There's one fight that I thought he just did not deserve to win at all.
Lawrence Larkin.
No, it was even before that. He just laid back the whole time.
Tom Lawler? No,
it might have been Lawler. I likened it to Carmont fought like the champ. Like, he just laid back and was like, "Come at me, bro." Tom Lawler, yeah. I didn't quite understand that decision, and Carmont, I'm not going to give him any shit, but he's one of the first guys that I will just say I haven't been overly impressed, and a lot of that is because he seems to have such a wealth of talent. And I know we always look at guys like fighters like we wish they were in a video game and we want to mash the buttons, but Carmont's got tremendous size and length that don't come in unison. If you get a long, lanky guy, it's rare that he's physically strong. But he has that. On top of that, he's got some explosive striking. He's real athletic. So he is a tough, tough bastard. So, I don't want to paint him in any other way whatsoever. I'm actually completely on the fence for this one. I actually think the reason a lot of people aren't high on Carmont, maybe myself included, is because he has such a, if anything, overly judicious, bordering on complacent style. But that makes it a bitch for the guy across from him to mount any offense, and also to do so without leaving yourself susceptible to his counters, and he's a talented counter striker. So I am completely on the fence on this one. I'm kind of leaning towards Holloway a little bit, but I don't, from a matchup standpoint, I think Carmont's size and takedown defense might be, so I don't know, steer me.
Yeah, the thing with me that bugs me about Carmont, and I think it's basically like what you say, is that he has size, he has the athleticism, and he has the technique. I mean, he's actually a very solid technical striker, especially at range, which is really rare in MMA. But he refuses to sit down on his strikes. And in fact, he very rarely throws anything with power and intent.
It's all speed in on light on his toes because he's
Yeah,
always moving, laterally to avoid, which is again not pleasing to the fans, but not an
yeah.
unwise strategy either.
It's not unwise, but it just like he does it even again at time when he doesn't have to. Like when he'll have a clear striking advantage, and he'll still just stay way outside, and he will make sure that he hits his opponent with the very end of his punches or the very end of his foot, and just like it keeps him ahead, but it just doesn't
Wow, the
do it
fans.
doesn't make any sense for a fighter with his skill. And um, I like I don't know. It's hard to pick. It's hard to pick him. It's hard to want to see him win because it's usually going to be just not at all fun.
Let me
And
ask you this, and then sorry to interrupt you, but since
yeah,
I have to go in 20 minutes and we have a whole
yeah,
nother card to cover, I thought Carmont's takedown defense was really, really solid. A lot of
yeah.
that based on the Lawler fight. But then Jacare, it's hard to tell whether his wrestling has improved that dramatically or whether maybe it was Carmont's takedown defense isn't as phenomenal. And to me, that's going to be a big thing because I can see Dalloway catching him or doing okay on the feet, but I think obviously his bread and butter is going to be not only on the ground but on top.
Well, Lawler and Jacare were really the only two fighters he's ever fought that can wrestle a lot, and Sedenblad, even which we talked about as a pretty good grappler, was able to get a lot of offense on him early and take him down even, I believe.
Did he take him down?
I believe he did. So
Hmm.
I would say that I'm actually going to lean Dalloway here because I do think that Dalloway has the takedown ability and the grappling ability to not get caught. And right now, I would say that Dalloway is probably at his peak as a fighter. He's probably just I think especially like his last fight. Who was that against? That was against
Poach? Was that his last fight?
no Fischera, Cesar Fischera,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
where he just knocked him out.
That was a mauling.
Like I think that Dalloway is really in his prime right now, and he's put together a pretty decent striking game. That if he can be aggressive with that and with his takedown and submission game, I think he can handle Carmont everywhere.
I think what killed Dalloway was the Jared Haman fight because I believe that's the only time I've seen a fighter gas out in the first round, like halfway through it. That was so bizarre to me, and I thought he was going to
Yeah.
trounce Haman after that. So I'm going to go Dalloway as well. Let's move to the headliner of this card, a fight everyone is or should be excited about: Mark Munoz versus Gegard Mousasi. What you thinking?
I'm thinking Mousasi right now.
Let me throw one at you because we were talking about this the other day. I'm kind of adamant that Musasi's takedown defense isn't as piss poor like everyone says. I actually think it's like really stable or solid. It's definitely not a weakness. I think it's all based on the King Mo fight. That was prime athletic explosive King Mo before his knee got all jacked up, and he obviously did whatever he could to take him down and hold him there.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
And I think the big thing with Mousasi is that, I mean, especially as he goes on, is that he's excellent at dictating range. Really excellent at it.
Unless he's fighting Machida.
Unless he's fighting Machida, but so what? I mean, like
I know,
everybody
you're right.
fighting Machida is not excellent at dictating range.
Well, and my thoughts before that were that Musashi is mostly a boxer. He rarely throws kicks, so he's excellent at dictating what I'd call punching range or
Yeah.
hands range.
And he certainly doesn't have to worry much about Munoz's kicking game.
Indeed, and that's the old. I think that's a brilliant sprawl and brawl strategy, a la Chuck Liddell. When you're a boxer, you can keep your balance in your feet, in your base underneath you, and your hands are in a position that's really conducive to whatever takedown defense. Digging an underhook, a whizzer, sprawling your hips back. I think that is going to be a big key for Mousasi here.
Yeah. So, and Munoz has a ton of trouble with fighters who dictate range on the feet. I mean, he just always has. You know, even all the way up until Machida recently. The difference between Machida Munoz and Machida Mousasi is night and day.
And I'd also add in spry fighters that have a decent semblance of takedown defense can be tough for
Yeah.
Munoz because he's an excellent wrestler. His striking has come along, but I don't necessarily think think he transitions the best, meaning, you know, I mean, a lot of times when he shoots, you either know it's coming or you can see that it's coming, and
Yeah.
he's kind of either in I'm going to strike mode or I'm going to change
Yep.
levels and take you down mode.
Very much so. And so I think this is Musasi's fight to lose, and I would be, I mean, like it would be Munoz could win it if he can get on top because his ground and pound and his when he gets on top, his top control is stifling. But I think that I don't see that near as being nearly as likely as Musasi pot shotting him from the outside.
Yep, and I agree. And I mean, we're going many, many moons ago, but I've always been high on Musasi's guard game and sweep game. You hardly ever see him there. And this goes back to when he fought, you know, Hector Lombard, of course, Olympic judoka. And I want to say, I know Lombard took him down at least once, and it took a minute or two, but Mousasi swept him and then just kind of dominated him for the rest of the fight. Didn't dominate him, but was in no trouble and kind of coasted to a win there.
Yeah.
So I kind of transposed that on the King Mo fight, and I don't know whether Mo's wrestling base is that good and solid. And if that's the case, Munoz should have all of that in spades too. So I'm really intrigued to see. You know, I'm going Mousasi here. I really like Mark Munoz. I don't know why. I always feel the need to throw that out. Everyone that I've talked to that's either in his circle has ever encountered him really raves about that he's just a genuinely good cat. So obviously nothing against him, but I'm going to go with Mousasi here. I am intrigued to see what happens if Munoz can put him on his back.
Yeah, I mean, it'll definitely be if that happens, it'll be interesting. But I might also be a little surprised if this fight gets out of the first round.
Really?
A little, yeah.
Has Munoz been, other than Matt Hamill booting his head into the rafters, has he been put out
Machida,
by strikes? Weidman,
Machida.
Machida. It's good that we have these talks. I like to think out loud. All right, now we have to move forward, hopefully a little bit more expeditiously.
Yep.
TUF Brazil 3 finale. This is Fabio Maldonado filling in for Junior Dos Santos versus Stipe Miocic, which would have been a hell of a fight.
Yep.
You know, mad respect to Maldonado, but I am not high in his chances in the main event. But before, do your thing on the preliminary card, man. I mean,
All
both in
right.
the advent of time and my interest, the two fights that are standing out to me are Tiago Umalatov and Dan Magomedov. Is that even
Thiago
right?
Malatov, I have to admit, I'm really unenthused for
So
because I
wait,
think
I'm sorry. Oh, okay, yeah. Why are you unenthused? I thought weren't you really high on Umalatov?
no, no, I have been really down on Umalatov. In fact,
In
um,
the Magny fight was didn't probably didn't do a lot to change your lift your
no,
spirits on him, huh?
no, Umalatov is a solid. I mean, he gets that bump for being Dagestani that all Dagestani fighters are gonna get right now. But he's a decent like he was a decent journeyman fighter on the circuit he was on. Like he's got some okay boxing, he's got some okay top grappling, but that's it. He's not an incredible striker, he's not an incredible sambo guy. Nothing else there really excites, and quite frankly, Paulo Thiago appears to be on a pretty bad slide. So
That I would agree with, and that's why I'm kind of, I guess, interested to see where these guys are at. Refresh my memory quickly on Umalatov. Uh, M1, what was his you know, where was he at before he came into the UFC?
he might have been on the Pro FC circuit.
All right. I mean,
It,
it's
it, it's not even like remarkable in that. Let's see, it was Fight Nights, Dictator Fighting Championship, United Glory, Pro FC, IM1. Yeah, he was on like he had a couple M1 fights, but just not any. He doesn't have. He's just not anything exciting at all.
I was going to move on, but didn't you want to talk about the Hobar versus Pedro Munoz
Well, yeah,
scrap?
I mean, we got RFA versus Legacy FC championship match here, cross promotional title fight.
And
And it
who's
should
who?
be what?
Is Munoz is RFA, right?
Yeah, Munoz was RFA, Hobart was Legacy FC.
I haven't had a chance to watch Hobar. Give me the quick rundown.
He tends to like to kind of Hulk slam people when he gets a chance inside. He has a high school wrestling background. Um, and he's not a real technical wrestler. He's got some decent patient technical striking. He throws some decent hooks and stuff like that, mostly more boxing than anything, but he's not a great technical striker. And he's shown some all right grappling. I don't know, it's just one of those guys who like he does everything okay, but he doesn't do anything great. Um, probably his biggest asset is he doesn't have a bunch of defensive liabilities. But Munoz is a Munoz is a much better grappler and a much more solid but not terribly powerful boxer and kickboxer.
Which is a good combo.
Yeah,
Technical grappling and maybe somewhat unkempt, but frighteningly enough to get your attention. Powerful striking. There's a lot of dashes if I was going to write that out, but
he doesn't have much power, but he throws his technique is decent and it's developing, and he's fast enough and he has enough natural athleticism that he closes. I mean, the big thing is he closes distance amazingly well, and he has a really technical takedown game chained to his striking.
it goes to what we were talking about. I don't remember who, but the team quest, when you flash out a strike, it doesn't even have to be pretty, but it's got to be enough to get your attention and make you worry and focus on it. Am I wrong that he kind of excels in that and flashing enough of his hands to get people worried about defending strikes before he changes levels?
Yeah, very much. I mean, the big thing, just his problem was that he had to fight Rafael Asuncia at the height of Asuncia's skill as his first UFC fight. And like that's not a battle that some raw guy off the regional circuit is gonna win.
Well,
No,
shit, Asuncio's got to be one of the most underrated men in MMA right now, right? Considering
yeah,
how he looked against Dolomite. See what I did
yeah,
there?
yeah, I did see that.
So who you gonna pick for this one? I was leaning
Oh, it's
Munoz,
got to be
but
Munoz easily.
all right.
He's top. And I don't care about the tough. I don't even consider the guys who are facing off from TUF Brazil that aren't in the finale as in the UFC, because there's a 95% chance that the loser of both those fights gets cut immediately. So to me, that's not even really worth talking about if we're moving for brevity's sake. And otherwise, I think Souza versus Adiva is going to be a pretty interesting fight. Adiva's got his competitive wushu champion background,
Wushu.
and Souza has shown himself to be a pretty damn good MMA boxer. He's got a style I consider him to have kind of an Eddie Wineland style, coming out of Brazil, where he keeps his hands low to defend takedowns really well, moves in and out of range really fast, and with a lot of with a lot of decent skill, and moves his upper body real well, and just has a really solid basics boxing game.
So how about Rodrigo Dam and Magomedov? Anything?
Hopefully Magomedov just tools Dam. That's what I want to see, because I'm really high on Magomedov. I think he's one of the best lightweight talents out there. Just like from a raw, he's one of the best counter strikers possible out there. He's just
Big
an
kickboxer,
amazing.
right? Technical kickboxer.
Yeah, great technical kickboxer. He's got that sort of what I call it a Russian style. I don't even know if that's true, but it's a Russian style of boxing or of kickboxing where he doesn't throw any jabs or really any straight punches. It's
I'm not a
all
geography guy, but I believe that's like just like European style boxing.
yeah. And so it's very counter striking based. He doesn't throw any jabs, but he's just wickedly fast and accurate and has great combination striking. And what he showed when he fought this young kid, I want to say his name, Terry Martin, in his first fight, who was a former middleweight, then welterweight, down at lightweight. He's just a massive lightweight.
Wait, like former UFCer, heavy-handed
Not
Terry
that
Martin?
Terry
All right,
Martin.
just clarifying.
Tony Martin, maybe? Tony Martin. Yeah, Tony Martin, not Terry Martin.
Damn you.
But not that Terry Martin. But massive, massive lightweight in Tony Martin. who is this a hyper aggressive, powerful wrestler grappler, and Magomedov showed that he has a great like scrambling grappling game to go with his skill. Just really technical at getting out of bad situations and at scrambling from the bottom. And then his takedown defense is just fantastic and rock solid. And he's just one of those fighters that I think has flown under the radar for a lot of people, even though he was an M1 champ. And I think has a huge future in the division. His only loss is a split decision to Frodo Kaspalayev.
No shit. That's pretty
Yeah.
impressive. Frodo's a mean little Shire man from the Shire. So leading in I guess I thought Rodrigo Dam was going to win TUF when he was on it. BJJ black belt. Good striking. I thought he was more of a power guy when he chucked that right hand at Jorge Masvidal and put him out. But I was actually surprised yesterday when Nate said that Dam was 3-1 in the UFC. Those must have been some quiet ass wins, or maybe I'm just morphing into Kid Nate in his lack of concern or awareness for the happenings of MMA.
I mean, he's fought almost entirely. I don't even know who Anastavio Medeiros is. That might be fake. That might be. I have no idea who the fuck that is.
It's a perpetrator.
They're saying 147. I'm looking at this. Dom. Where is Dom? He fought. Yeah, I don't know who Anastacio Medeiros was. That must have been his TUF finale fight, which is why I don't know who the guy is at all.
Okay. Well, I don't feel bad for not knowing.
It was his first UFC fight, so it was almost certainly his TUF finale fight.
Oh yeah, it had to be so.
But otherwise, he's fought. He's fought in Hirota and George. He's fought guys who fit right into his style, which are sort of like well-rounded, but not terribly. I mean, George is a BJJ grappler who likes to brawl and but isn't a better grappler than Dom. And Hirota is, he's solid, but he's not really exceptional anywhere. And so he's fought these guys that just sort of, he's a good solid lightweight, and he's fighting some good solid lightweights, but they're not guys who can really outclass him in any area. They can't outstrike him, they can't outgrapple him, they can't outwrestle him. Magomedov,
those are favorable matchups.
Yeah, and Magomedov can outstrike him any day of the week, unquestionably.
All right, let's move on if you don't mind.
No, I'm happy to move on.
Leading into both of the finale fights for TUF Brazil 3, this is another one that's just bizarre to me, matchmaking. Demian Maia versus Alexander Yakovlev. I don't understand.
It was originally Mike Pierce, so Demian
How
Maia.
long ago? Because I remember, I know
a month and a half ago.
I want to say that's much more towards a month and a half, because I remember that.
Yeah, Yakovlev isn't a last-minute replacement, but he is a replacement.
Okay, well that makes it a little better, but still, to me this makes no sense whatsoever. And wait, no, Yakovlev was already. They must have swapped him from somewhere else because he was signed.
Yeah, he was signed, but he didn't have a fight. He was just signed.
I see.
And quite frankly, and I think this is going to sound crazy because I think Maia's almost certainly going to win it, but I think this is a really shitty fight for Demian Maia.
Yeah, but here's the way, that kind of goes into my theory on this, which is no one's going to know who Yakovlev is.
Yeah.
Solid fighter.
Really solid fighter.
Beat Paul Semtex Daly. Not all on the feet, but he beat him with an MMA-oriented striking game, which says a lot about the dude's,
Yeah, he did hang with Paul Daly on the feet for large portions of that fight and not get hurt.
Oh, and he was smart about it, because any time there was a risk, he'd change levels and clinch up, and then Daly didn't want to get taken down, so that completely took him out of offensive mode. Yep. But going back, here's my point. No one knows who Yakovlev is. He's kind of a bad motherfucker, but the casual observer will not know that. And then he is pretty damn solid, and then people are going to see Demian Maia fighting against some guy they've never heard before. I think best case scenario, I don't see Maia. Well, Demian Maia submission wise, he could. So that's the best case scenario. Demian Maia. No, really, that's bad too because then everyone's going to think Yakovlev sucks. So I think Yakovlev is good. I think we gain or get to know almost nothing from either guy out of this matchup.
Yeah, I think it is a good chance that Yakovlev doesn't get smoked in this fight. Let me say that.
Yeah, I totally agree, and to me that
Because
is
he's a master of sport, not just in in sambo and hand-to-hand combat, but in freestyle wrestling too.
and
I mean,
he's entertaining as shit. I mean,
yeah,
this dude has got a
and
future.
he's got a great wrestling game. He's got good top game, and he's got his striking is perfectly attuned to his wrestling and grappling.
And he's smart enough to know how to cycle through. He's a
Yeah.
three-dimensional fighter with the diversity and the knowledge to
The
capitalize.
big thing is though is that he's not really strong as a welterweight, and he's not great off his back. That's
And
his weakest area.
and you know, obviously, anywhere on the ground, that's Maia's forte. And I actually think Maia is brutishly, underratedly strong. I don't even know if
Yeah.
that's a word, but fucker is strong. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, everyone gets off on what he did to Chael Sonnen with that throw, but I mean, Demian Maia is a physical powerhouse at welterweight. Look what he did to
Yeah.
Rick Story. No one does that shit to Ricky
Well,
Story.
even for a round, what he did to McDonald.
And Mark Munoz. That was a fight that everyone thought, you know, it was going to be the opposite. And
Yeah.
Munoz did pretty well on the feet. Maia did too, but Maia, I want to say, took him down more than once, and he made it look a lot easier than higher credentialed wrestlers did
Yeah.
against him.
So I do think this will be competitive because Yakovlev does have he is a three-dimensional fighter with takedown defense and good striking that is attuned to his grappling and his wrestling. But eventually, I mean, unless some wheels have just fallen off of Maia and we don't know about it, because Maia did look pretty bad after the first round against Rory McDonald. There's no escaping that. That was a bad fight for him after the first round.
True.
So, it could be that something has just broken. We don't know about. That
How old is Homeboy getting now?
Homeboy is
Like
in his
mid-30s?
30s. He is 36. So
All right,
he is
maybe that's it. Father Times.
he has had 24 pro fights and he is 36. He had a long Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu career before all of his pro fights.
Since
He
the
has
womb.
been fighting since 2001, so he is 13 years into his pro career.
So that could be it. And I
Yeah.
like that you're giving respect to Yakovlev, and my concern is that Yakovlev is good. People don't realize it, and Maia might struggle with him, will likely win, and it's not
Yeah.
going to do a lot for Maia, and people aren't going to recognize Yakovlev's skills.
Yeah.
So I would love to. I have nothing against Demian Maia, but I would love to see Yakovlev at the least open up some eyes, gain some respect, put him in trouble, or even pick up a win here. How pissed
and
would
the
Brazil
thing with
be?
Yakovlev is he's not young and he has a ton of experience. So there's no, I mean, I think the best case scenario out of this fight is you get like Yuri Alcantara, Uriah Faber, where Alcantara lost, but he's immediately inserted himself into the top 10 of his division.
Right, which I love that. That's the old. The one thing I think the UFC is lacking is pride's focus on the spirit of the performance, not necessarily the win or the loss. So I just realized we forgot about the Hani Jason versus Robert Peralta fight, and
That's
I do
okay.
want to.
We keep forgetting about that. You're pressed for time.
Yeah, I kind of want to. I'm actually excited about that fight. Peralta's
Okay.
a mean bastard. I mean, the kind of dude that you lock up in a room and just throw like raw meat scraps to. I mean, just tough as hell. And to me, I like Hani Jason's. How would I say that ratio of technique and aggression? You know what I mean? He's got technique, but he still remembers that it's a fight. So I'm kind of intrigued in this one. You probably got to go with Hani Jason because of his technique, but to me,
Yeah.
Peralta's the kind of dude that can put anyone out.
Yeah, I mean, Peralta to me, and I hate to say this because it sounds negative, but it is what it is. Peralta is an example of just how far you can get with a lot of natural talent and very little training.
And the mentality.
And the mentality.
I know what you're saying, and I kind of describe Francisco Rivera that way against Mizugaki,
Yeah,
and that's not to say he doesn't have technique, he's not skilled, but I mean, to me, a better way, a positive way of putting it is that the core competency for these dudes is to, I mean, just fuck
yeah.
people up.
And
You know
it's
what
not,
I mean? Old
Peralta has
school.
a second full-time job, so it's not like you can even say, oh, well, maybe he does train as much as everyone else. He doesn't. He
I
just
didn't even know
doesn't.
that.
He's
What's his other
got,
job?
he's a waste water treatment manager, I believe.
Really? That
Yep.
is so odd. That is a job that I can. We used to in my old life. I used to. It's yeah. I
Yeah.
know what that is though. It's not. It doesn't smell nice. But
No.
all right. So let's.
So
Well, I'm.
Peralta, yeah, he's a decent fighter, but Jason has a lot more technique and as much power and a lot more ways to win this fight. Peralta would have to basically just outbrawl him.
I can see a little bit. I picked Stevens over Honey Jason just for that reason though.
But Stevens is a much more technical kickboxer than Jason was.
And he's bigger and he's longer. I wouldn't. I wouldn't say he's more. Well, either way,
He's
I
more
see.
technical. I mean, he's not way more technical. He's not like a kickboxing savant, but Stevens is a much more technical kickboxer than Honey Jason.
Actually, not that I'm disagreeing with you, but when I said about Hani Jason's ratio of technique and aggression, Stevens is probably the best, one of the best examples I can think of for a
Yeah.
dude that he's not sloppy, but he remembers it's a fight. You're here to,
Yeah.
you know, kick and punch people in the
I
face
mean,
and hurt them.
Hani is one of those throw from your pocket Brazilians on the feet, where he'll throw a lot of strikes and he generates a lot of offense, but it's just like my chin will come at you, and then both my arms will come at you behind it, and somewhere in there I'll probably overwhelm you and hit you hard enough that you'll get off balance and I'll choke you out.
Hmm. I don't remember him.
Peralta, so Stevens is much less that kind of guy. Hani's, his big, he has enough athleticism to get away with his style, basically. Except that when he met somebody like Stevens, Stevens is every bit as athletic and had a much more basic, solid technique game that he could just pick at Jason and set him up for that head kick and knock him out.
I gotcha. All right, we've been doing this show since last week, Monday. 3 more to go.
All
Go
right.
quickly on these. I didn't watch TUF Brazil 3 this season.
Yep.
I would have picked Vitor Miranda right off the bat. He would have been one of the only guys I probably recognized and am familiar with. That's the heavyweight tournament final. And in the middleweight tournament final, vaguely I remember Marcio Alexander Jr. And this dude's quite the finisher. 12-0. He's finished everything in the first round except for one. And actually, his opponent, Alves de Andrade, is also. I'm sure there's some kind of pronunciation.
Warley Alves.
Yeah. He's also undefeated. But so to make it quick, I'm leaning Alexandre Jr. on that one and Vitor Miranda in the heavyweight tournament
Those
final.
are terrible picks.
Damn you.
Varley Alves is one of the Patrick Wyman talked about him in his big future champions series.
Okay, well, just in my defense, I based that on not knowing either of them and only knowing their counterparts.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Varley Alves, he fell just outside the top 25. Watching him, he is a freak of nature. He has wrecked all of his competition on this season of TUF. I just skimmed through it for his fights, and he choked one guy out in like a minute and knocked the other guy out in a minute. Marcio Alexander Jr., yeah, he has 12 first-round stoppages, but his record of opponents is terrible. He fights out of Tavares Combat under Thiago Tavares, and most of his fights have been promoted in the Tavares Combat League, and they're almost all against guys making their pro debut, guys who are way undersized, guys who have 10 losses. It's just like he's been fighting nothing but cans, and he at his base, he's a longtime karate stylist, and he styles himself after Lyoto Machida. He even calls himself Lyoto. And he throws a lot of kicks on the outside, and if he gets a lot of room and time to work, he can set up a pretty good kicking game, and then he's got that... He uses like a lunging left hand to counter somebody coming in on him in the same way that Lyoto does. Somebody will come in and he'll have that rear hand cocked to fire off on him. But after that, I mean, he doesn't have any of the footwork. He doesn't have any of the defense. He doesn't have any of the other striking that Lyoto brings. And Warley will give him zero space to work.
All right, so I'll submit to the perils of admittedly using the Kid Nate / Sherdog method on
Yeah,
that last
and
one.
the other thing is, so Vitor Miranda. This is a tough fight to pick. Vitor Miranda is a longtime kickboxer and has a solid kickboxing record. But Antonio Carlos Jr. is a pretty good BJJ grappler coming up with like a world champion at brown belt and a Pan Am's champ at black belt.
Ooh, I didn't know he's a
And
Pan Am's champ, but still, he's got 3 fights. Miranda, I want to say, has some like regional
Miranda has a
K1
lot
experience.
more.
Team
I'm
Nog guy, 2 losses are to Fabio Maldonado. See, I actually know this one.
Yeah, you actually know this
Everybody.
one. So
I
I
only
would
know
say
one
this
of
is
them.
the toss up. So I'm being harsh. Mostly the other one was a terrible pick, but I'm being harsh for this. That I think this is a toss up, and I'm gonna pick Carlos Jr. just because I think, like the past couple seasons of Tough have shown, where you've got guys like Gastelum and Holdsworth and guys who are like 3-0, 4-0 coming in, but who maybe had some real decent talent behind them. I think that Carlos Jr. is probably this season that guy for this season. He's got a lot less experience maybe, but
Hmm.
has a chance to come in and make a mark here. But honestly, it's a kickboxer versus a grappler, and neither guy is going to be competitive in the other one's area.
All right, I'm tempted to think Miranda. I'm trying to think of the fights that I've seen, and he's a Nogueira Brothers guy. But so first of all, you can be as harsh as you want on that first one. The whole reason I got into not only doing the show but MMA was to not be the kind of meathead jackass that I'm being today, but circumstances and time.
Yeah,
And I'm still
but
failing on that whole time thing. So either way, I'm a jackass for that. I'll take it. I don't mind. But I do know Vito Miranda enough. I'm going to stick with my guns and pick him on that one.
you should. I mean, it's a toss-up pick, quite
For my
honestly.
own fucking pride, I should. All right, I'm like 20 minutes late for what I was supposed to be. Let me reel up this Smaldo versus Miocic fight. You got to
Miocic.
respect. What did I say? What did I say?
No, I'm just saying Miocic. I'm just saying no. That's who's gonna win. We
Oh,
can end
right.
it
You
right
were going to a pick.
there.
We're all
Yeah.
sensitive about pronunciations on this. Like, what? What did I say? So, you got to love Maldonado, or at least you got to respect him. Here's my issue with the dude. He already seems like he could squeeze down to middleweight, and that's, again, based on the totally superficial look, like everyone used to say about Fedor. So, either way, let's just disregard that. Now he's going up to heavyweight. My issue with him is not only is Stipe, I don't even know. Underrated is all relative compared, but this dude is for real. I mean, serious wrestling credentials, excellent boxing, excellent movement, and like we were talking about before, he strings them together for a heavyweight very well. Maldonado is just too one-dimensional, and even in that one dimension, so he's touted as a boxer. I don't even know if I've seen the dude throw a straight punch. They're all bent arm in the pocket, hooks,
He's got
uppercuts.
a mean jab. He has a really mean multiple jab. That's what he uses really more and better than almost anyone else in MMA is the
I would
ability.
call it mean. You're right, from a technical standpoint. But is it mean, really? I mean,
I mean, it is in that he throws it with so much consistency and accuracy that even though you're like, oh, I can eat that, and then you're like, oh, I ate 4 of them, and suddenly I'm kind of rocked, and then I ate an uppercut, and then I ate another 4 jabs, and another uppercut, and 4 jabs, and then a hook, and he throws it out there. I mean, that's the thing that I think throws a lot of people off with him is that he looks like he is this kind of doughy guy. His defense is terrible, and but he just keeps popping this jab out there and working behind it in combination, and you think, oh, this isn't hurting me, oh, I'm fine, and then suddenly you've eaten like 150 strikes.
I don't remember him throwing that jab that much, but I could be
He
wrong. But
throws it a lot.
I will completely concur on the consistency and the accuracy. But I mean, that's his whole thing. I mean,
Yeah,
output. The dude's a volume guy. But my issue with him is what you said with his defense. Very little head movement. I don't know how many times. So he wants to just get in close into the phone booth and tie up and throw rib roasters and short range punches. Well, it would sure help his cause if he had some major knockout power. And I
yeah,
think actually that's a chance where dial back on the volume. And like you were saying with Carmont, sit down in a punch, plant your feet, and try to blaze the guy. If you go through all that trouble and take a couple shots and get the fight where you want it, do some fucking damage while you're there, really make hay of it. There's so many times guys grab him and knee the shit out of him, and he'll just stand there and lower his base and try to shield block
Yeah.
knees. And so I think his lack of offensive potency and firepower, nothing really against some of his technique, or definitely not his consistency, his volume, and his output. But the way I'm looking at it is, how is this dude going to win this fight? He hardly ever one shot. I don't even know if I've ever seen him one shot knock out everybody. When he does get when he is able to be effective or do damage on the feet, it's obscene volume that gets him there, and he has to do that by getting right in the guy's wheelhouse. Stipe's bigger. I don't know how you transpose their boxing, but Stipe's a damn good boxer. He's technical, and he can change levels. Was he not an All-American? Cleveland State might have been D2.
Maybe a D2. I don't know that he was an All-American. He was a Division One NCAA Division One wrestler, but not. He was an NAAFS heavyweight champion.
Yep, and that's the feeder league. That's actually pretty solid. But so he was D1, but just not an All-American. Cleveland State, is that right?
I don't know.
It doesn't matter. But either way, I mean, short notice, all those things, are important disclaimers here. But I see very, very little chance. It'll be fun to see Brazil, and this will be kind of a rocky thing, because I honestly believe Maldonado has 0 to none. It's going to take all kinds of bad cliches about hell freezing over and taking wings.
There's not even like a lot of technical breakdown I would want to go into, because he just has so little chance of winning.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, what am I going to talk? Like, oh, I'm going to break down like Maldonado. And the only thing I will say, and this is a worry not for Stipe Miocic against Maldonado, it's a worry against Junior Dos Santos, is that as another fighter with a full-time job, I tend to worry about those guys plateauing early.
Who else has a full-time job?
Well, we talked about like Peralta.
Yep.
Wineland, let's see, Paulo Thiago.
I thought there was one relevant to this trifecta of Maldo, Miocic.
Miocic.
Oh, he's a firefighter though, right?
Yeah, he's a full.
Does that count as full-time? Don't you just sit up there and look at Playboys and wait for the phone to ring before you can slide down that pole and flex? That's what I thought those motherfuckers did.
Look, so even if the firefighting job isn't full time, he's also an EMT.
That's right. Okay, I did know that. Yep, strong style guy.
At some point, like against really top competition, I worry about that plateauing his skills. That he won't have time to develop in the ways that he should to face really top fighters. But against Maldonado, I mean, he's going to be so much bigger and stronger, and he's got this wrestling base. Basically, the only hope that Maldonado has is that Miocic decides to sit on the outside and wait on Maldonado, and Maldonado can find that groove with his jab and just start to output, volume like crazy. Because it could be the kind of thing where Miocic, like I say, he eats a few of these jabs. It's like, oh, this isn't affecting me. And suddenly he's eating like 50 of them, and you get into that John Vellante territory, where for 2 rounds solid, Vellante just got the piss beaten out of him.
After he did really well in the first round.
Exactly. He did great in the first round, and then he just like slowed down, and suddenly you could see Maldonado. He just like he does. He locks into this groove. And if he gets there and you can't throw him out of it, that's where people just get in deep trouble.
Totally agree. I think the chances of that happening are not high, and I also think that, and if he does get in that groove, Miocic is not just going to lay back and say, well, what do I do? I mean, the dude he's bigger, stronger, he's more athletic, he has better wrestling, he has a better overall game, and Maldonado is big heart, tough as hell, but what really gets me is his lack of finishing power, and a lot of times you can always say a puncher's chance, but usually that comes with a guy who can touch people up and make them fall over dead at least a couple times. And I think the way that Maldonado does that via consistency and volume is just not going to do him any favors in this matchup. So I think we're good. We're good, yeah. Miocic, we're good?
We're good.
All right. Hey, thanks everybody for listening to us while we assembled this half-ass pile of crap in the last minute, and we're gonna try. I have a initiative to be a little more organized and whatever. You get the idea. We love you. So leave your shit, Zane. What are you? The Zane Simon.
Yeah, at the Zane Simon.
All right, and I'm at Uncle Justice. Thanks for watching. Can't believe you made it through it. We promise to improve. All right, everybody, have a good weekend. We'll see you at the fights. Not really. We'll talk to you about them while they're happening. Time to wrap it up, Zane. Stop mumbling.
Time to wrap it up, Dallas.
All right, bye.
Bye.